Hey everybody, before you sell that old car to a junk car removal service, I want you to pay close attention to this video. To start off, I want to give you an introduction to this Jeep here. So this is a 1997 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo. I bought this from a local pull-apart as a parts vehicle back in February of this year. So this vehicle, when I bought it, it was essentially a whole vehicle, only missing a few things. It was only missing the original wheels and tires, missing the powertrain control module. It had a shattered passenger rear window, this one right here, which I've replaced, and it was missing the catalytic converter. This vehicle spent only a few days roughly at pull-apart, well 6 days total. It arrived in early February and I purchased it like 6 days after. I found this vehicle literally 2 days after it was put on the lot. Now this Jeep here, it's definitely got some age on it. It definitely needs some work. It's a fixer-upper. Of course the paint's faded, but this Jeep here definitely could be a good candidate for being put back on the road. Now somebody obviously wanted it gone, and I can understand a vehicle like this. It needs some work done to it. You just want to get it gone. Many people end up in this situation. I totally understand that. So let's get you a quick look inside this thing. Now of course the exterior does look a little rough. It needs a paint job for one thing. But look at this interior. Now it ain't the best, but I mean look at the seats. Normally you would think a vehicle this old would have badly torn seats and just all sorts of other stuff going on with it. But the interior on this thing is actually not that bad. The headliner's sagging a little bit. That's kind of to be expected. But this thing, it's relatively clean for its age. For the most part, I would say that the interior had been taken care of. Now, we are missing some plastic trim here because I have been in the dash in this thing. The story is, before I bought this thing, I actually pulled a few parts off of it, including this headlight switch, the vehicle information center, and a couple other little things. Things that are high demand items that I just want to go ahead and get before I made a decision on whether or not to buy this whole vehicle. So, as you'd heard me say, this is bought as a parts car. And I want to talk a bit more about that here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and look in the engine compartment. So this ain't your run-of-the-mill 4-liter Grand Cherokee. There's plenty of them. This one's got the 5.2-liter V8. It's very similar to my 96 Grand Cherokee Limited. So this Jeep here, essentially, it was, since it spent so little time at pull-apart, it was essentially a complete vehicle, just minus a few things that they took off of it. I mean, the only things I had to do to it, aside from replacing the PCM, getting a set of wheels and tires, which I scored for really cheap, along with the fuel tank. The reason I had to get a fuel tank is because pull-apart, they drilled a fuel tank. And they also drilled a transmission pan to drain fluids out. They did not drain the antifreeze out of it, and there's actually still charging the AC system, believe it or not. Now, before I go further with this, I do want to mention that this is not a video bashing pull-apart. This is not criticizing pull-apart. Pull-apart, basically, they were kind of forced to do what they had to do. And I'll elaborate more on that in just a little bit. But anyways, as you can see, it's a complete vehicle, more or less. So again, PCM, the wheels, it arrived on donut spares when I had it towed home. And of course the fuel tank, also new set of spark plug wires, spark plugs, and distributor cap and rotor. My plan for this thing at a minimum was to get it running to see what I had, because I mean, why would you want to go through trouble of, let's say, pulling the engine out and dropping it into another Jeep, or pulling out the transmission or any other major part when you don't know if it's even good? So at a minimum, want to get this thing back up and running. So there you have it. It's back together. All right, so now we'll walk around this thing. Now of course it's wet out here, but I'll get you a look under. So right now, it still does not have a catalytic converter. I just have it bypassed with a piece of pipe right now, so that way it don't sound straight piped. But the frame on this thing, It's in good condition, hardly any rust at all. This is not a northern vehicle, although this thing was actually sold new in Connecticut. It spent like 3 years up there based on the history report. So this is actually a California emissions Jeep. So anyways, yep, the frame looks good. It ain't crusty rusty like you would find with some vehicles of this vintage. Now some people like to give Jeeps crap, but you know what? I've been driving that 96 Grand Cherokee for 15 years, and it's been a great vehicle. And my plan was to hopefully get me a second one, either as a good running vehicle or one as a restoration project. So, let's go ahead and start it up. Now this vehicle does have a few little issues going on with it. It might need transmission work. The crankshaft position sensor sometimes will act up. Usually that only happens once it's fully warmed up. It also does burn a little oil. I think it's leaking through the valve seats, or excuse me, the valve seals. But anyway, cranks right up. Has 244,000 miles on it. In comparison, my 96 over there has 345,000. So the thing is, once this thing gets up to operating temperature, it will burn a little oil. It will smoke some out the exhaust. But as you can hear, it's a good running engine. The 5.2s are very reliable. So you're thinking, okay, this would be a great restoration project. Sure, it needs some work, but would be a great restoration project. But there's just one problem. Alright, so this Jeep, even though it is certainly capable of operating on a highway, although it does need some work, this vehicle, by current laws, is permanently banned from ever being driven on the roads ever again. You're thinking, oh wait, it's a salvage vehicle, right? You can fix a salvage vehicle. Well, yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. But by law, this is not a salvage vehicle. This is a junked vehicle. And you're thinking, okay, the NMVTIS or NMVTIS, however you want to call it, as well as many states, they define a junked vehicle as a vehicle which is incapable of operation on a highway and only value as a source of parts or scrap. Now you're saying, okay, the vehicle runs. This vehicle's never been involved in an accident. Why should something like this be permanently banned from ever being driven on a highway ever again? So the thing about that is, certain pull-apart locations do not have a dealer license, and therefore the only way they can buy used cars is to buy them and junk the title. And these vehicles end up in the what they call the salvage yard. Really it's a junk yard, because these vehicles are not salvage vehicles, they're junked vehicles. Now the reason why I bought this, at a minimum, it's a great parts donor. I could use it to fix up that thing if ever needed it. I mean, but I'll be honest, the 96 down there runs great. It doesn't need an engine right now. But should I ever need an engine, I mean, there you go. Or if I was to buy another Jeep that, let's say, has a blown engine or whatever, what's cool is you could actually swap all the main components out of this thing, you know, the engine, the transmission, all that good stuff, to 5.2 swap another ZJ Grand Cherokee that has a 4-liter engine in it. Alright, so here's the thing. So I'm located in North Carolina, and North Carolina has very specific procedures that's coded in the general statutes on how companies like Pull Apart, Pick Your Part, and of course similar companies like it, there's very specific outline procedures they must follow when they buy a vehicle that is to be used as a parts or scrap car. The thing is, once that vehicle is deemed as a junked vehicle, it's basically impossible to get it to reverse that. The reason why is typically the law was written with the intention that a junked vehicle is a vehicle that is like so badly damaged that it's not safe to ever fix that car back up and put it back on the road ever again. The definition of a junk vehicle is so vague that honestly, cases like this Jeep here, these vehicles end up falling victim to this trap. We'll call it a trap. So some of y'all might remember the CARS program, or Cash for Clunkers. I hated that program. I think it destroyed a lot of good vehicles, good cheap used cars that people could use to get to work, take the kids to school, you know, cheap, reliable transportation. Now, of course, a lot of newer Jeeps, they are known for terrible reliability, but these older ones, they're pretty dang reliable. Now this one here, it would be great if I could put it back on the road. But this Jeep has fallen victim to a loophole that was really under a law that was really intended for vehicles that were badly damaged. So for example, a salvage vehicle, a vehicle that's wrecked and your insurance company deems as a total loss or whatever. Generally, salvage vehicles, there are ways to put a salvage vehicle back on the road. However, with junk vehicles, you're stuck. Once the vehicle is marked as junk, that's it generally. So that's why Pull Apart had to sell this to me as a parts vehicle. And the thing is, when you have an old car, be it a junk car or, I mean, a car that you see as a junk vehicle, it's not worth fixing or whatever, or just an older car, keep in mind when you sell that car to any of these companies like Pull Apart, You Pull and Pay, Pick Your Part, and other companies like it. Now this is not being critical of these companies, these businesses. In fact, I like Pull Apart. I like going there to find stuff. Now, I don't intentionally go there to find whole vehicles. Usually I go there to find parts, but I was there back in early February, and sure enough, this was sitting there on the lot. And I said, you know what? I spent several days thinking about it. And I was like, I'm gonna buy this thing. Worst case scenario, it'll be a parts donor. Best case scenario, I might be able to convince the powers that be that this is not a junk vehicle. And this is the other issue. Due to the fact that these vehicles are deemed as basically junk, and therefore DMVs, like depending on your state, they see these vehicles as, you know, hazardous. They see them as, you know, at the end of their useful life. They see them as only parts or scrap. Therefore, they give you no options to put them back on the road. And you're thinking, well, could you not classify it as a reconstructed vehicle? No, you can't. And could you convert it from junk to salvage? Generally, no, you can't. Depending on the state. Some states they're a little more relaxed. Apparently, in North Carolina, they see any vehicle that's labeled as junk as, oh, it's at the end of its useful life. It's not safe to put back on the road. Now this Jeep, like I say, this would be a great restoration project. I would love to restore this thing. I mean, look at it. You want to know something crazy? Check this out. The AC system even works. It's low on charge because likely Pull Apart, they recovered the refrigerant out, but they must not have got all of it out. But yeah, I mean, this thing, it moves. It goes right into gear. I can't take it on the roadway and test it, but it does go into gear, and forward and reverse works. Transmission might need some work, but I mean, this is a fine example of how junk branding on vehicles like this, it's like Cash for Clunkers 2.0. It is the ghost of Cash for Clunkers. Now granted, Pull Apart did not pour sodium silicate, where that material, that chemical is in the engine, and blow the engine up. But I mean, the vehicle being branded as junk, it prevents someone like me from being able to fix a car like this. And I think now maybe y'all can understand why this is really frustrating. So some Pull Apart locations, they're able to get a dealer license. Now the location I got this from, the state literally will not give them a dealer license. They won't do it. So therefore, they're kind of forced to do this. And I've seen some really decent cars at Pull Apart that probably didn't belong there. They should have had a second chance. So the thing I would like to see changed with these laws is to stop unilaterally treating vehicles that are deemed as junk by a private business as terminal. States like North Carolina, they should give someone who has possession of a quote-unquote junked vehicle an opportunity to fix it and put it back on the road. Because the thing is, the cost of vehicles now it's ridiculous. And these newer cars, they're very unreliable. Cars from the 90s and 2000s, they're super reliable. And in many cases, they're easy to fix. I mean, most of the maintenance I do myself on these things. Like I say, that 96 Grand Cherokee, I've had it for 15 years, had it since I was 20 years old. And I'm 35 years old now. I've been driving this thing for 15 years. They had 223,000 miles on it when I got it back in 2011. Here it is, 2026. This one has 244,000. My 96 had 244,000 miles on it back in 2014. So, just to really put in perspective, something needs to change with these laws. And I would hope that perhaps anybody who is in political office watching this, I hope you can see for how ridiculous this is. Now, Pull Apart, yeah, they emphasize that they sold it to them for parts, but the reason why they sold it to them for parts is because they were forced to. The state won't grant this local store a dealer license, and therefore they had to buy this vehicle as a scrap vehicle and junk the title. And this is kind of a gray area. A lot of cars that end up at Pull Apart, shortly after they end up there, they get parted out and they get destroyed beyond repair. But this Jeep, I mean, this is one of the few examples, or I can't say few examples, I know there's more examples out there like this, but this Jeep is an example of a vehicle that got rescued from Pull Apart, but yet because the junk branding is terminal, I can't fix it unless some miracle happens. And one of the reasons I'm making this video is perhaps maybe to help let that miracle happen. One of the reasons why I'm actually pushing so hard to get this out there is not for this Jeep. People will say, why are you putting this much effort into this old Jeep? It's a almost 30-year-old vehicle. Right, I get that. However, I will say that I love Jeep ZJ Grand Cherokees. It was a vehicle I wanted while I was in high school. And having driven this one for 15 years, I mean, there's a reason why I still have it. So, what I would like to see happen, again, I would like to see there be changes to how the DMV sees these vehicles. No, they're not all damaged beyond repair. No, they're not all incapable of operation on the roadway. There should be an avenue for the North Carolina DMV License and Theft Bureau, which is essentially the State Highway Patrol. Their vehicle examiners should have a means of being able to come out here, or I could bring this thing to them, tow it to them, have them examine it, say, hey, this meets the criteria of a salvage vehicle, let's unjunk it. Because there are cases where vehicles like this do get unjunked and they can be fixed up. However, in North Carolina, it's basically impossible. Certain states, like for example Illinois, from our research online, they have a method of unjunking a vehicle or reversing a junk title. Now, the vehicle history report for this Jeep does not currently say it's a junked vehicle as far as the title goes. There's no branding on the title digitally that says it's junked. However, the VIN, according to the NMVTIS, there was a disposition that was filed by pull apart, required by state law. They had to do this. They had to report this as scrap. So the North Carolina DMV, License Theft Bureau, Examination Office, when I contacted them back in February about this, they said that this vehicle was sold as scrap to pull apart, salvage, and in turn was sold to you for parts. Therefore, the vehicle is a junked parts vehicle and not be retitled in North Carolina. Now, granted, at the time, it was not running, but it did not take much to get this thing running. I mean, replacement of the PCM, replacement of, the fuel tank, getting some good wheels and tires on it. Now, technically, I didn't need to replace the wheels and tires to get it running, but the tires were offered with the fuel tank for a really good price. So I hopped right on it and got them. So, as you can see, it's fully up to operating temperature now. Getting low on fuel. Why put a whole lot of gas in this thing when you can't drive it down the road? But look at this thing, y'all. I mean, it's really a shame for someone who wants to see older vehicles like this saved and preserved to have laws that work against you. To have laws that work against those who want to preserve and keep older, reliable vehicles on the roads. I mean, this thing did not deserve to die. I mean, look at this thing. Now, sometimes the crankshaft position sensor, which is back there, will act up and it will cause this thing to stall. But replacing that is, I mean, the part is actually really cheap. The part is very inexpensive. Replacing, however, is a bit of a chore, but hey, I mean, this thing really does not deserve to be destroyed. Now, granted, like I say, it was not blown up like it would be if it was sold as a cash for clunkers vehicle. But cash for clunkers really is kind of still living on in a way, thanks to the junk/scrap branding on titles in the VIN. Okay, everybody, so I'm in the process of editing this video and I want to add a little more information here. So the thing is, when you sell a car for scrap to pull apart or wherever because you just want the vehicle going, you have to understand, of course, you're potentially losing out on money by selling that car as scrap instead of selling it with the title to some other person, like a private owner or somebody who would be interested in fixing the vehicle up. Now, I understand older vehicles like this can be hard to sell, especially if there's something going on, like transmission problems. Now, this Jeep, it does, I think I mentioned, it has a failing crankshaft position sensor. Now, it did not act up in this video, but what it will do sometimes is it will cause the thing to stall, and sometimes you just have to give up and let it cool down for like 15 minutes and then try again. And it is the crank position sensor because it does throw a check engine light code for that. For actually telling you it is the crankshaft position sensor circuit. So, of course, it's understandable that vehicles like that, sometimes they're hard to sell. So sometimes you find it easier to call it pull apart or pick your apart or any other business that removes junk cars or old cars. I mean, pull apart to advertise that they buy old cars. And given that this pull apart doesn't have a dealer license, the only thing I can offer you is scrap value. Now, one of the biggest reasons of all that I'm pushing so hard for this is not necessarily for this old Jeep. No. Now, it would be nice to be able to get this thing retitled so I can fix it back up. But here's the thing. It seems that we sort of live in a throwaway society where sometimes people they don't care about how much money they'll lose by selling a car as scrap. I personally have seen examples of really decent cars getting sold to pull apart because the previous owner just didn't want anymore. Stories of literally people just driving the car. They say, I don't want this car no more. I want to go buy me a new car. And they leave it at pull apart and just basically leaving the staff at pull apart stunned that really somebody just gave up this car for scrap value. And this is another reason why the state and really the federal government needs to re-examine the definition, well, not just the definition of a junked vehicle, but re-examine the terminal nature of the junk branding, because left and right we're finding cars getting labeled as junk when in some cases they have nothing wrong at all. So essentially, that's why I say this is Cash for Clunkers 2.0. Vehicles that have little to nothing wrong are being destroyed. Not physically destroyed, well yeah, kind of that too, but not blowing the engine up, but having their title destroyed, having their title junked. Once that title's junked, you can't get another one under the way things currently are, at least in this state. So yeah, there you go. So to wrap this up, if you have an older vehicle that you want to sell, or you want to get rid of, now again, this is not being critical of pull apart or you pull and pay or pick your part or any of these companies. It's not their fault that they're forced to do this with these vehicles, particularly the locations that that don't have a dealer license. You know, it'd be nice if companies like that could brand these as salvage vehicles, because a salvage vehicle could still be a parts only car, but a salvage vehicle, you have a process to where if you wish to repair that vehicle, the state will let you repair it and put it back on the road with examinations to confirm it is safe. So you can see it's burning a little oil right now because that's, like I said, that's what it does when it gets warmed up. That could be fixed, however. Probably just needs an engine flush and some seafoam. But if you have an older vehicle that you want to get rid of, please keep in mind what will happen to it if you sell it to a junk car removal service, because many of these junk car removal services, they will junk the title, and a vehicle that somebody would like to buy and fix up, well, they can't fix up because, oh, it's a junked vehicle. So that being said, let's go ahead and shut this down. So there you have it. This Jeep runs and it drives, but due to having junk on the VIN, because of what's really a gray area, unless some miracle were to happen, this thing, the current chassis, could never be retitled or re-registered, which is a real shame. This is why there needs to be change. Something needs to change. This gives me a lot of bad memories of Cash for Clunkers. Now again, although they're not blowing the engine up, this is almost just as bad. When a title or a VIN is junked and it can't ever be registered or retitled ever again, I mean, it's just about as bad as it being, you know, a Cash for Clunkers vehicle. So anyways, that being said, let me know what you think in the comments. Should this vehicle be allowed to be put back on the road? I think it should. But unfortunately, this vehicle, and actually many newer vehicles with very little wrong, people sell these things to pull apart, and pull apart is forced to junk them. And when they're junked, that's it. That's it. So, that being said, again, I hope now that you have watched this video, and if you're still watching, I appreciate you sticking around and watching through the whole thing. But this is what happens when you sell that old car to a junk car removal service. Pull apart, and like I say, this is not against them, but when you sell to a company like Pull Apart and your local store does not have a dealer license, this is what happens. It gets junked. So, junk is worse than salvage. Salvage, you have options to get that car fixed and back on the road. Junk, you do not. So, that being said, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.